Some
Peace.
kind of wizardry.
Humans quit being mean to me. Humans
Ay,
above,
ay, ay.
welcome to AI Snap That. I am your host, Michael Rollins, and I am very sleepy today. I am joined as always by my co-host, Thanos, he of the Snapdom and also the Chapstick. Thanos, how are you doing today, buddy?
I spent like 6 hours outdoors today, and I should have put the chapstick on beforehand,
Oh.
but you take what you can get.
What's the UV index over there?
It was 10. I think it can go to 11,
So
but
wait, does this mean when we see you next time, your lips are gonna be, they're gonna have like a little extra filler? Is that where we are?
when you don't have lip balm at hand, you just use a sunscreen everywhere,
Uh-huh.
and you do what you can. So I think I'm okay. The
Uh,
painful lesson that I've learned is you really need to reapply between sessions of kiting, because water does take the sunscreen off. So if
how
you're like, I'm fine, I put some earlier, you are not, you end up like with red patches. So today I have no red patches.
how long were you out kiting? 6 hours?
No, I was out for like 6 hours, but I kited for half an hour, and the wind like really picked up and it's getting blasted out of the sky. So I came out, had lunch,
Okay,
went back in, did about an hour, and the wind died. So it was kind of
that's excellent.
that does happen a lot with this sport.
What's the highest you've been carried?
But if you're carried by the wind without jumping, you have completely picked the wrong kite size by a lot.
But I mean like with a jump, whatnot. Like, have you ever been like,
You can do a jump. Like my highest jump is about 4 meters.
okay,
That's
for all
about
of
12
the,
feet in those
yeah, for all of the
other
American,
metrics you people use.
that's about 12, 13 feet. So maybe 14.
So, yeah.
Yes, no. Today we're going to cover a little bit of interesting tidbit, maybe suspect news, and then we're going to talk about kind of our experiences with the individual models, because I find myself having to explain over and over which models are good, what they're good for, what the differences between the current models are and the previous generations. And I thought we probably should just talk about this. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. I was listening to the All In podcast. I don't know if you've ever listened to it, Thanos. It's a very tech bro-y podcast.
Not sure that I have.
Okay, it's worth a listen because it's very, very interesting. These guys
I
are
think you're right, because I was thinking, what do I need more in my life? And it was
more
like
tech
some
bros.
tech bros.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean,
So I think I'll do that.
to be clear, these are very smart men. However, occasionally they're like intense bias shows as they praise Elon Musk over and over and talk about how Tesla is going to become like a vertically integrated company and is going to win at AI. And I'm like sitting there going, I sure, like, I'm curious.
I'm gonna
And
remind you, I'm on Starlink, so
right, oh
if you
yeah, right,
piss off the Elon gods, then my
yeah,
connection's gonna
if the
drop off, and
connection
you're gonna talk to
wobbles.
yourself for another 45 minutes.
So, anyways, I was listening to it today, and they came up with this stat, and I've been trying to search for this stat, and I haven't been able to find it. And I think maybe they may have misstated the stat, but what these guys are talking about is basically SaaS platforms are dead, and they're expecting that the whole SaaS model, well, 3 of the 4 of them are advocating that the SaaS model is effectively broken, and that this idea that you're going to pay per seat for unlimited usage may be going away, and people are going to switch over to a like price per token model, which seems to be something that Google is trying to aim for. And so the idea being, if you're
Just to be clear, you're talking about the SaaS as a subscription model, and specifically to the domain of AI. Not
no,
like
not
SaaS is going away.
so not just AI, but like most SaaS businesses can in some way, shape, or form be duplicated in a custom way with current AI coding. And I want to pause right here and say that these guys are maximalists. And I'm not 100% certain, probably not even 80% certain that they're close to right. But
I'm not sure I fully tracking the hypothesis. Like when I think of SaaS, I think the company that I pay $20 a month for, and they give me 5,000, PDF generations, and I give it a little template and some data, and it generates a PDF for me. Like that's one SaaS that I use,
so this would be more
or
along
the
the
thing that
lines
does
of
my workflows.
Salesforce, or they're talking about the larger SaaS platforms like, Salesforce, or they were talking about Snowflake, and there's a few other big.
But like 80% of the business of those companies aren't AI. Like maybe they have AI
Right.
that's
Yeah.
just on top of it that does a few extra things.
That's the point. Yeah. What they're saying is that they think the
Enlighten
SaaS
me.
model is going to collapse, not necessarily only as related to AI, but as related to just software in general. Anyway, that is an idea we can explore later if we would like to. There was this factoid, this tidbit that popped out that I found truly intriguing. And I feel like what they said was that Anthropic, Claude Code, accounted for 70% of ARR in all of SaaS platforms for the last quarter. Seems rather far-fetched to me. And I
I don't know. Let's pick your credit card bill and my credit card bill, and I
well,
think they may be close.
well, that's the thing, is like basically these guys are saying, yeah, Claude Code is winning. Like Claude Code is winning. And the majority of, like, it may not be much more than 50%, but anywhere above 50% of all code being produced is generated in Claude Code. And of generated code is produced in Claude Code. And that it's a bonanza that, Anthropic is absolutely killing it. And going back to this idea, like looking at how much, until I got the $200 a month, thing, looking at the fact that I was spending $15 to $30 a day as an individual engineer on Claude Code, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I cannot find the stat though.
We need to get you off Opus 4 if you're spending that much.
Oh, I'm not now. No, because I paid the $200 tax to let me write code, or to let the robot.
Oh, with $200 you get unlimited Opus 4.
No, but you get an extraordinary number of tokens. I never ran out
Okay.
of tokens on the $100 plan, but I would run out of Opus tokens on the $100 plan. But when you switch to the $200 plan, it's just obscene. It's like 20 times more tokens than you get on the $100 plan. And so at some point I just kept running out of Opus, and I can tell the difference between the two. Sonnet just feels dumb compared to Opus.
Really?
It really does. And I can tell when they switch. And, sometimes what it'll do is it'll field things out differently. Like depending on how you're setting the model, Claude Code can farm out some requests to Sonnet versus some requests to Opus. What it tends to do is use Opus up until a point when you've used like 20 or 35% of your tokens, and then it'll switch over to Sonnet. And keep in mind, these tokens are distributed by day. And so I'd code for a few hours, and then all of a sudden I would notice that everything is just dumber. And then I'd like do /model, and it would say, oh yeah, you're using Sonnet. You basically run out of Opus. Yes. And so one day I was like, screw this. So I went and ponied up for the $200 subscription, and I regret nothing. I regret nothing. So
I used Opus for a couple of hours, and I did not notice any substantial difference. And I'm using Sonnet 4, and I don't know if it got better or I got better, or we kind of both got better in like working with each other.
Yeah.
But it rarely nowadays does anything too dumb, and when it does, it's really easy to rein it back in.
So when I say it's dumb, I don't mean that it's useless. Far from it. Sonnet is still one of the best models out there. What I mean is that Opus is so much better than Sonnet in my usage that I can tell when it switches to Sonnet. If I had never used Opus, I would think Sonnet is the best coding model I've ever used. And so switching over to Opus, which is just it's basically Sonnet. It's just a lot more behind it. And I think the context window is larger. I think that the training is a little more in depth. It runs on more hardware. Like, it is just a bigger model in general. And I
So
find
give me examples of what sort of things you notice it doing that are like either
here's
that when you
here's
go to Sonnet, what feels dumb, or when you go to Opus, what does feel smart.
I have conversations with Opus, and that's the difference. Like, the thing with Opus is that I find myself treating it as a colleague as opposed to an intern that I just tell to go do it again. It's a really subtle thing, but I have started into the habit of, when I sit down to do something, I actually, as opposed to telling the LLM what I'm going to do, or excuse me, as opposed to telling the LLM, this is what we're doing and I want you to do it this way, now go do it. I've often been sitting down and starting with, this is what I'm looking at. Why don't we talk through some options in terms of approaches for this? Can you suggest anything? Let's focus on these particular aspects of it. Okay. And when I start that way, the quality that I seem to be getting is better, first off. When I start that way with
For the planning part or for the coding part later?
it, both, like, it seems that there's
Okay.
some kind of carryover into the actual coding part from the beginning of that conversation. And so I get to, if I do this with Opus, I have realized I'm having a conversation with the agent. And it's not just like it's listing 4 or 5 things and I pick one of them. It tends to list a few things and then goes on to explain why it chose them. And oftentimes it's surfacing something I had not thought about, that I just had not considered. And as a result, the entire process is smoother, it's faster. And I find that I'm able to pull out a lot of nuance with Opus that I just can't with Sonnet, right? Sonnet's code is great. It's great. But I feel like with Opus, I'm getting better results in general, and I feel like I'm getting smart.
So it's interesting you say that it will think of things that you haven't thought of, and I found that to be the case as well, right? You would discuss a feature and it would flesh it out, and it's drawing from a much broader set of knowledge than you and
Mm-hmm.
I can keep in our
Right.
recently used cache.
Yeah.
That said, I've also found the opposite to be true in that it will generate a lot of junk. So when I say, hey, let's work together and think through this,
Mm-hmm.
it will generate an absurd amount of information that I then have to read through and be like, okay, so these 60, just throw those away. Those are bullshit. These 30, yeah, I already thought of those. Those are great. Let's keep those. And those 10, yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, but
And it comes up with like so many details. Like, no, dude, like we don't really care about this or that or the other. Like that's part 8, and we're in part 1 right now.
so like an example of this, and actually I saw this pop out in Gemini deep research, but we'll talk about that later. I was talking to Opus. I'm working with these expert agents, and I'm very interested in how they're working and what they do. I think we had talked about last week. And I was talking to Opus. I was like, hey, let's sit down and look at building working memory for these agents. What was really interesting is that Opus told me about the various types of memory that I did not realize there was a distinction to. So it told me about kind of like base working memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, and then like project memory, and how each of them is used differently and which platforms. Like, I didn't realize it. LangChain provides LangGraph, and a lot of this is just built into LangGraph to make it easier. or so it said. And it was really interesting because I had never actually stopped to think about the fact that these things might have various forms of working memory. It seems kind of obvious after the fact, like, oh yeah, well, probably humans do the same thing, but like it educated me. And I don't think Sonnet would have ever done that. It's kind of the point.
That's super fascinating. And I also wonder, where did they go after Opus? If they already called the model Opus.
Okay, well, but they've been consistent with this throughout their releases. They'll give them the model number, and then they've had Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. And ChatGPT is trying to where they've got mini, no designation, and then pro, but then sometimes they've done like an O3 mini pro.
Yeah, but there's also like there's O3 and then there's 4O, and it's like, does the O go before? Does it go after? Does it mean something different depending on where it goes?
Yeah, but see, here's the problem. If it with ChatGPT, if the O is in the front, it's a reasoning model. And if the O is in the back, it's not a reasoning model. And so
there's a lot of letters. Could we have used something else? Also, O looks like 0.
Or DeepSeek R1 and DeepSeek O, I don't remember what it was. I mean, yeah, it's a little absurd. But anyways, what's your experience?
DeepSeek is where I go to do my deep research for current affairs. I hear is the most accurate and unbiased one.
What was that? DeepSeek?
DeepSeek, yeah. And now we're officially banned in China. Thanks, Mike.
That's correct. So anyways, what's been your experience with Claude?
I have been relatively stuck with Claude for development stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I will very much, I started with 3.5, I think it was Sonnet, and then 3.7 came, and that was an improvement. But again, I'm not super clear if that was the model or that was me. Because I think by that time I sort of reined in how I wanted it to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if I'd be getting the same. I mean, my guess is probably a little bit of both, right? But I was getting steadily better results. I'm not sure I noticed a huge leap. Well, actually, that's not true. I think I did notice a fairly big leap from 3.7 to 4.0, but I think that was also coincidental to the time that I started a whole new prompt as to, you go in very little steps that the human can understand. I'm the human, and if I can understand it, then I'm going to reject it. So I want it in like real small, tiny chunks. And also, like, if it doesn't pass tests, just do not pass go, do not collect 200, do not go any further. I don't really care for it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the fascinating things I'm finding about it is that with the tool that I use, Rue, it has the ability to use different profiles. So if I'm working for a different client, I can put a different profile. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually paying this out of my own pocket, but it's kind of nice to see where the money is going.
Yeah.
But you can't customize the prompt on a per project basis. And different projects have different ways of running, say, linters or type checkers, and they just work in slightly different ways. So I'm in the process of kind of ripping that out. It's not exactly model dependent, but saying, hey, go look in that file to find out how you run these specific things in your different projects. So then each project can have its own files, and it knows how to do everything. So getting back to the main point is, I think for me, upgrading to Sonnet 4 was coincidental with just changing the prompts. So I think it feels like strong all around, but it's unclear how much of it is a little bit of both.
Well,
I have had, since I got off Cursor, I haven't had it fight me on the white space. I don't know if it fights you on the white space, but I get a lot of fights on the white space.
Even think about it.
It's like, could you just not bother with the white space and just run, trunk format, and the white space is taken care of for you? Apparently, also Xcode has a shortcut, like Command KX will fix the white space. And it would go like 3 or 4 times, like, oh, I'm still noticing a different white space problem. Let me try that again. It's like, just stop, just leave the white space.
One thing I have noticed recently is that sometimes I don't know if it's Sonnet or Opus, but I have had multiple times over the past week where I've had to just quit the whole freaking session because Claude got hung up on a previous instruction, and there was no way for me to tell it to knock it off. And it would just I would say, all right, let's go do this, and it would go do it. And then it would say, all right, now let's implement blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I told you not to do that. Like, what is wrong with you? And it would just do it over and over and over. And finally I was like, I'm done. And I'll quit this stuff.
I still wonder how much of that is also tool chain as opposed to just the model. Since I got out of Cursor, much smoother experience. Again, it could be coincidental. It's hard to go back, but like it's not doing like the really stupid, dumb stuff that Cursor used to do. And again, I'm not sure I can specifically blame it on Cursor, but
this only happened bail out of an execution chain. So if it's off and running and it's something I do not want it to continue with, you can double tap escape in Claude code and it'll stop execution. And then you can direct it to go do something else. But more and more I'm noticing if I bail out of that execution, it's almost like an artifact gets left over. And
so how much of your hard drive can you save by bailing on the rm-rf/?
Probably quite a bit of it. Okay, ma'am, I want you to go to the blinky cursor thing. Anyways, okay. What other models do you use?
So I generally will ask all my coding stuff to Claude.
Okay.
And if I'm feeling cheap, I pay for like $20 a month for like a desktop Claude.
Mm-hmm.
So if I just have to ask a question that will not involve much pasting back and forth with my IDE, I'll just go to Claude and just ask you, I have a desktop app, and hey Claude, how do I do this in
what do you
Unix?
All right, well, how are you paying for Claude when you're coding?
I paid just the API, straight up tokens.
Okay. Oh, so you pay for the
So I have
individual
a token.
tokens. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And unfortunately, my phone is not here, so I can't go check my credit card bill.
Yeah.
But I would bet you that 70% of my spend is on that. I think I see every few days, I see $20 on that. But I think the value is still there. So, I don't feel bad spending a couple $100 because I can get a lot more done than I could without it.
Yeah.
I spent 3 days on a boat today, and it had internet, and I spent the whole time coding. No issues, got a lot of stuff done. It's just, if you think about it, it's kind of mind-blowing, right? You're traveling on a boat, moving, dictating to an AI that is then transcribing your things to code over your tiny little phone device. And I had like 40% battery when I arrived at my destination.
Were you on a computer or were you just talking to your phone at that point?
No, I was on my MacBook Air.
Okay. Yeah.
But I remember when computers like not very long ago would last for 3 hours and they would die with the biggest battery you can get a hold of.
So I've been marveling at this because I'm doing something similar where I literally just work on, there's this beautiful beach that's near me and you got to hike into it. And I've been working on that beach and I like tether off my phone. My battery gets destroyed, but that's fine. I've got my laptop with me. The only issue I've been really having is dealing with controlling sand. It's just some scratches
about mosquitoes
on the screen. I bring bug spray. Right now, it's not the mosquitoes that are getting me. It's the deer flies. I hate those things.
So is there like a film of bug spray on your keyboard?
No, I don't spray the key. I don't spray the computer with bug spray.
Get on your hands to get it over you.
No. I don't put the bug spray on my hands. That's absolutely disgusting. There was one day. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the deer fly, but they're these like triangular flies and they bite and they swarm and they're awful. And I was running and man, these things swarmed me and there had to have been 20 or 30 of them and they were just tearing me up. So I reached into this little pack I have and I pull out my bug spray and I start spraying all over myself and went right down my face. All like my glasses.
Yeah, that's why I don't live on the East Coast.
My glasses just went. I had it in my mouth. I was like, I've tasted it for days. I was like, this is horrible. So I don't put it on my hands either.
Yikes. The most dangerous animal I came across today was a sea turtle. And it was probably more dangerous for her than it was for me.
A couple snakes today.
Ew.
A lot of lizards, couple snakes, frogs everywhere. These little teeny itty bitty frogs. Anyways,
that's why I live in California.
So
just get the odd mountain lion.
All right, so all your coding is with Claude.
We digressed.
Do you use other models for anything?
I don't really use other models with the coding. I have a desktop version of ChatGPT.
Okay.
And I use that mostly for writing.
Okay.
and other kind of general things. If I do deep research, I'll use some of the thinking models there because I'm paying for the expensive one. Use it for image generation. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yes. All of our thumbnails are generated by ChatGPT, the 4.0 model.
Yeah. That was fun when I try to generate a thumbnail of you and I, and it just put some other Michael in there, and it was like, no, I want this specific Michael, and then it just had the same dude. And it looked like kind of a little more like JD Vance.
Like, those are fighting words right there.
Don't want that guy.
You look like JD Vance. Not that there's anything wrong with our vice president. He seems to be an attractive man.
Seems like a very nice guy.
It was really interesting. I still have not been able to uncover, but there was a reporter from The Verge that's kind of indicated that, like, the number one, if you really pay attention to the way that ChatGPT is generating images, it is not using diffusion, and the majority of the other image generation models are built on diffusion, which is like, basically they randomly select points throughout the image and they start turning it into something that makes sense. But if you look at the way that ChatGPT does, it actually scans across, and the net result is that the generation is often far more consistent. You can kind of get the same image multiple times if you're careful. But
it's also like stubbornly consistent. But when it makes a mistake, you cannot tell it to get rid of that mistake.
Sometimes I can. But the problem, but here's the thing, in this podcast, the reporter, I can't remember her name, who was talking, she had been digging into, hey, how does this thing work? And somebody at OpenAI kind of indicated that they're not really certain how it works because they were using one of their advanced models to help them create it. And so the indication was kind of that they have this new thing, it uses a new technique, and they're not completely certain what it's doing. And
that is shocking to you?
A little bit. Yeah. A little bit.
I mean, it's not. It's weird, right? Because we now have a lot of our stuff that works in a way that we don't understand.
Right. But I mean, you would think that they would be able to untangle what is happening, and it seemed like they couldn't. Now, maybe this was just a misunderstanding in the conversation. She said she pushed on it. She couldn't get anything else. I've not seen any other reports. It's not like something is leaked. So maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But the image generation in 4.0 is really good. It's really so.
Yeah, I wish it hadn't stopped drawing versions of me that look like The Simpsons.
Yeah, those lawsuits.
It worked for a few days and then it was done. But it was so good.
Those lawsuits are yet to come. I primarily use ChatGPT for image generation. That's almost all I use it for at this point. I don't really pay for it. I don't think I'm even on the $20 plan. I pay for Claude $200 a month. But it's really very interesting the way it generates these images. What about Gemini? Do you use Gemini for anything?
I don't think I've ever used Gemini. I think the closest I've gotten to is using Notebook LM of the Google variety of AIs to generate a couple of podcasts for fun.
So
it was super interesting of how you can take like a dry subject, like we did it on a car ride with some folks. We fed in a proposition at one of the California props that we knew nothing about, and then it made a podcast, and at the end of that we understood how that roughly worked. It was really good.
They've rolled all of that into Gemini. Do you realize that?
I do not.
So if you go into deep research mode for Gemini, it is effectively using something very close to Notebook LM technique. What it does is you give it the prompt, it tells you what the research plan is, and then it goes out and it will literally just scour the web for you. So it scours the web, it pulls all this stuff together, then it generates a report that's normally about anywhere from like 5 to 15 pages long as a PDF. At that point, it will then, you have the option to turn it into a podcast. And so it'll generate these 5 to 8 minute podcasts based on the deep research that you just did. I'm abusing it at this point. I'm like, oh, I'd like to know more about this. Can you please tell me? All right, now turn that into a podcast. And I'll just walk around for, I'll do the dishes and finish the dishes smarter. It's it's amazing. I love it.
It would be nice to have a better integration with that. I have like a lot of emails that
Mhm.
have interesting stories in them that I get piled in and I want to read.
Mhm.
Be nice if my email thing had, okay, take this email, turn it into a podcast, and when I'm working out, we can
So I just wrote a
have
tool that
this.
that basically does that.
Goes into my
I'll
email.
share it. No, it doesn't go into your email, but you can drop something. It actually focuses on text files and PDFs, but it takes a text file or a PDF. It uses ChatGPT to turn it into a podcast script. Then it sends each individual line off to 11 labs. And at the very end, it reassembles the entire thing into a single MP3 file that you can then do something with. And so
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
maybe I'll stand a version of it up that you could then forward your emails to or something. I would just be able to see everything. So like,
Well, you kind of like want to. Sometimes there's like an email that has like a few articles, and I want to like this one, and that one. So it'd be nice to just turn that into a podcast. It would also sometimes you just may not be even be a podcast. It's just like read this out loud so I can hear it later, but like don't like read it like the old Kindle reader was, where it sounded like a robot.
yeah, that was bad.
That was bad.
Any other models that you like, any other things that you use on a regular basis?
I tried to host my own models a while back
How'd that go?
with was it Olama, and I have a Mac Studio, an M4, I believe,
Sure.
with like a fair amount of oomph on it.
Yeah.
But if I try to take any substantial model, it would just crap out.
Yeah.
It was not good.
The only
So,
machine that Apple has, well, apparently the maxed out M4 Studio, and it's specifically maxed out on RAM. It will run the entire DeepSeek R1 model. Apparently, the big one.
well, maxed out on RAM is a M4 Studio maxed out on RAM is more than most people make in a year.
Like
Apple
512
RAM is
gigs
expensive.
of RAM. It is like,
Yeah.
it's obscene, but apparently it will run the model completely. And it's funny because somebody made the point that maybe Apple should just go make AI chips. Like maybe that's their AI play, is that they provide the hardware in the way that, Nvidia and Google are providing hardware, because apparently their chip architecture is so good that models tend to run better on them for inference. So,
Yeah, it's the Apple state of AI is sad at this point.
oh, it's so bad.
My daughter it comes down for breakfast in the morning, and she asks Siri to play some Taylor Swift song, and it doesn't. She says playing something else, right? It's just impossible to get the right song, and then eventually she does. She says, "Okay, now playing blah 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 Taylor Swift's whatever song,"
Mhm.
and then she goes, "There was a problem." Stops, and then that's kind of like sad but normal.
Yeah.
But the fun part was then she repeats the request in a deep voice
And
to
it
sound
doesn't.
like me,
Mhm.
and it does it. And it's like, how does this work? This doesn't make any
Well,
sense.
because Siri is keyed to your voice.
Yeah, but why doesn't it work when my daughter asks her to do stuff?
So there's actually there may actually be,
This is on my phone, by the way. This is like a HomePod.
yeah, but like, the whole, when you go to set up Siri and Google and
Yeah.
all
This
this,
recognized
yeah,
people.
I don't know that it's probably quote unquote trained on your voice, but it may not be trained on hers. The other thing though is that the microphone is very likely able to pick up your vocal range better than it can pick up hers. Because, even if she's, how to say this, women in general have higher pitch voices, and younger women in general have much higher pitch voices.
Oh, that's offensive, Michael.
Huh?
That's offensive.
I know, I wasn't, I was trying not to be weird, but now it's weird. Thanks, Thanos.
This podcast will not be airing in California.
Right? Yes, that's right. Nor will Michael be traveling to California anymore because he's banned. Yeah.
I think Newsom is signing your banishment right now.
No, in terms of things I use regularly that are not base frontier models, is I use 11 Labs a lot. Not, I mean, some. I pay for a subscription. I very rarely max it out, but when I need it, I find that it is very, very useful. Um, and I've actually distilled my own models before, which I found very useful at times. You know, if you have a very tailor-made thing that you need a model to do, you can basically create a data set of the thing that you want it to do and then go train it on something like Hugging Face. You start with a larger base model. So I might start with Olama or Gemma, which is the open source, and run it through this training process. And I end up with a very small, very fast, tailor-made model that is only good at one thing. But it does that one thing well. And that can be and then it's super cheap to run. And it will run locally, unlike Olama. So I've done that before and have found it to be, in certain use cases, really amazing. So I've definitely trained, or it's called distilled. It's not really training. I've distilled my own models. Let me think, what else have I done? I think that's about it. I've run things on like Olama locally. I've actually tied local Olama into 11 Labs to then have like a voice conversation with a particular model. But the problem is, like, my Mac won't run a big model. I have a gaming PC over here with a really decent graphics card. It'll run a big model. It'll run a bigger model, something that's like 40 billion or greater. Probably, I think I've seen it really struggle once it starts approaching 70 billion parameters.
You can run it over the network, right? So you can just,
Yeah,
the same way you would connect to
yeah,
an API, you just connect to your gaming box.
yeah. But I don't know. I don't need, like, unfortunately, Gemma and Olama, or Gemma and Google and, Facebook Llama, they're not great. Like, they're not frontier models. They're a couple
I'm
generations.
sad that Facebook is not winning in this
Oh,
race.
we should mention that.
Because only if they could have, really super highly powered AI to keep doing what they're doing, the world would be a better place.
So apparently, Sam Altman and OpenAI have been going to lead engineers and researchers at Anthropic and Google sorry, let me rephrase that. Mark Zuckerberg has been going to lead researchers at OpenAI, Google, DeepMind, and Anthropic, offering $100 million signing bonuses. This is not like over this amount of time. It's a signing bonus, right? And basically, like,
How long do you have to stay there to earn the signing bonus?
do you care? Oh, like,
Kinda.
I mean, yes, I am certain you were putting the handcuffs on your wrists. Like, you 100%. It's like, if you leave in 10 years, sorry. But it's $100 million and people are not accepting it because they won't work on the frontier models, and Facebook just doesn't have it. The Scale AI transaction just took place, and Scale AI, like, they do a bunch of labeling, and it's basically an acqui-hire, and they bought it to pull the people in, and it was like multiple, it was like 20 billion, I think. But it's the primary trainer that it does labeling. So Scale AI doing labeling, and Google was using it, OpenAI was using it, a lot of people were using it, and Zuckerberg bought it, pulled the people out of it, and shut it down for everybody else. So, like, Zuckerberg's out here spending money hand over fist, promising $100 million signing bonuses just to try to catch up. And he apparently has about...
That metaverse may not be going that well so far.
Do you ever wonder if he regrets that rebrand?
I don't understand. I mean, I did watch a video of him the other day that was discussing when they terminated the whole moderation. and he talked about going back to our origins of free speech. And it's now unclear to me whether he is just completely like amoral and an idiot, or just like Machiavelli himself. Like I'm
The
not
latter.
sure which of the two.
If you listen to Kara Swisher
Not
at
so
all,
sure.
no, if you listen to Kara Swisher, she will tell you over and over that he is the most dangerous man in the world. Because
Yeah, but not because of competence necessarily. Like
it's because he is extraordinarily competent and his moral compass kind of doesn't work. It's not that he's evil, it's that he does not understand other people. And
I'm not sure that he is competent. Like I'm looking at like specific things as to how Meta is run. And yeah, admittedly, it is a very, very big company, so you can argue there's some degree of success just by having that sheer size.
yeah,
Although you could argue there's other reasons for that. But I looked at, for example, like developer APIs back in the day when they had them. It was a freaking mess. Like you couldn't figure out how to use any of that stuff. It was crap. Like, they brought in adults to help him manage, and it was still a mess. Like you look
yeah.
at their products now, it's a mess. You look at their AI stuff, it's not the leading one. So I'm not completely convinced that he is as good as other companies are at execution, or anything for that matter. And yes, there's definitely the moral compass part as well, that there isn't one.
He's still the second richest man in the world. I mean, he's
I
something
get it.
right. Like, this is not all just luck.
Well, it could be right place, right time, and then ride the wave from there.
Maybe.
Like, you'd have to, there's certain situations where you'd have to be like more than an idiot to be able to like not reach that height.
I mean, look, I don't think you can make the claim that Apple is run by a bunch of dum-dums and they've still screwed it up. So, like,
Well, they've screwed up like one thing, but in general, I will argue that they're
friend. May I point
overall
you
line of
at
products.
several failures over time? The $10 billion that they spent on a car that they never made. Have you ever seen the Vision Pro? Have you ever put one on? They're incredible for about 15 minutes. And then you're like, this isn't what I don't want to live.
But the Mac is still like the best computer out there, and the iPhone is still the best phone out there, and I still like my iPad a lot. Like they do good stuff in other areas that is unparalleled.
Yeah, they do
and
amazing
they place a few
work.
bets like everyone else has.
Right. Point
Should we
being,
talk about Google Wave or Google Reader or a bunch of
God, I
stuff?
love Google Wave. God, I love.
Did you? Google Reader is more useful.
No, man, dude. I used Google Wave religiously for a while, and I miss it. Like, I just miss it. So, anyways, all right, we should wrap this up, man. We're talking about Google Wave. It's time to go.
We are so on topic today. I think we should keep going.
All right, humans of Earth, thank you for putting up with this. My name is Michael Rollins. I'm joined as always by my co-host Thanos, he of the Snapdom, and we hope that you have an amazing week. Adios.